Good morning, everybody. Thank you for being here with us today. This is Siembra Radio Show, and we have Pastor Dennis Gunnarson, like every third Sundays of the month, and we have Yazmin, the host of Siembra, connected from her office this morning. And we are going to start the show, so please stay with us all the way and hope you enjoy the conversation. So thank you so much for being with us this morning. Gracias, sean todos bienvenidos a su show de todos los domingos en punto de las 9:30 de la mañana, Siembra con Yazmin 4, y pues como cada domingo, cada tercer domingo del mes, hoy tenemos al pastor Dennis Connerson, quien va a estar dándonos una perspectiva de lo que está pues aconteciendo a nivel mundial. Así que le cedemos los micrófonos a ellos dos y adelante, Yazmin, por favor. Muchas gracias.
Buenos días, aquí. Buenos días. Good morning, everyone. We here in Washington State. In Tacoma right now. I am looking through my window and it looks like it wants to rain, but it doesn't. It's semi-clouded, but I do love Washington State. I do love the weather. I do love the rain. So either way, is it rain or it doesn't, I'm happy. Yes, this morning I welcome you guys, the people that are tuning in to this show Siembra, every Sunday morning from 9:30 to 11 o'clock. Every third Sunday of the month, I sit here with Pastor Dennis Gunnarson, and we're gonna talk a little bit about the current events abroad, overall worldwide current events that are happening. There is a lot happening, and we want to just touch a little bit of what our fee and our view of what's going on around the world. I want to welcome everyone that listening to us through VT Radio or VT Radio Universal, through TuneIn and 1.6. Hopefully I have it right, Chris, 1.6.5. Everyone that is listening to us this morning, welcome. Good morning. I hope you're doing well. I hope everyone is well. We're living in such a different time, and I like to say different, but it's not. I call it a recycled time, because what we think we've seen for the first time, we have our parents and our grandparents that are lived this type of time too, in the 40s and in the 30s. We had in the early 80s, we have the pandemic. I believe it was 1920 or 1918, Pastor Dennis. So we think we see something for the first time, but we actually not. Our parents, I have my mom and my dad, that they were born. My dad was born in 1931. My mom was born in 1941. So they saw all this, what they did because they were babies, but I like to call it a recycled time. So I want to welcome my host, Pastor Dennis Gernerson. Just tell us a little bit about yourself, because for the people that are listening and watching for the first time.
Okay. Well, it's been a couple months since I've been here. Yazmin and I knew each other from a previous church, and I have I've been a pastor in ministry for most of my life. Spent some time in Europe and Asia, and I've been in the States for the last 20 years, and I pastored in large and small churches, but most recently I have been just doing a lot of research on how did the church get to the position where we're in, where we kind of lost track of Jesus' teachings, and we're promoting a political message instead of a spiritual message. So I like to speak into happening and bring more of a scriptural or a spiritual perspective to those issues. So glad to be here.
And we was talking yesterday. We was talking about a lot of things, but let's talk a little bit of what's going on in Europe with Ukraine and Russia. And there is so much that I want to say we really know or don't know, because there's those two sides. And the big thing that we facing, and I say recycle time, is the big thing that we're facing today is the information part of it, the media, and the false, and you really don't know how to recognize what is true and what is false, because you hear so much, and we know that Russia is engaged for a long time in false information, in false media. So we really don't know, we live in a time where we don't know. We have to filter everything, and there is a lot of people that don't do that. For instance, I hear a lot of people say, well, Ukraine, the reason Ukraine is where it is with Russia is because of corruption. Is a government that is a big corruption government. And we talked yesterday about this. I said, still, either way, it doesn't give Russia the right to invade, or any country to invade another country, because they are in a system corrupt that we do have a lot of countries. I would say probably 80 or more percent of countries, the governments are in corruption. So the fact that we have Americans repeating that and saying that the reason this is happening is because Ukraine is a corrupt country. So what is your take on that, Pastor Dennis?
Well, the problem is complicated by all of the conspiracy theories that were originated by Russia to help influence our elections here, but also influence international activities in Europe as well. We know that about 8 years ago, there was a Russian, I would call it a puppet government in Ukraine that was extremely corrupt. He was amassing personal wealth from taxpayers, giving into the system, and he converted it to personal wealth instead of using it for the country. That kind of came out, and he was kind of forced out of office, which of course brought on Crimea when Russia came in and annexed Crimea. The current president was a comedian at the time, a Jewish man. He was a very popular comedian, and I think he was pretty much what they had available to them. So, he took over, but he was very opposed to corruption. So the allegation that it's a corrupt government is not wrong, but it's misguided. Because the corruption preceded the current president, and he has been trying to curb it and eliminate it. But as he is trying to eliminate it, he is limiting Russia's role in the country, which means that Russia is reacting and creating false narratives, claiming that the corruption is his and not theirs. So that's where that stuff comes from. The current president has leaned heavily on the West to help him in curbing that corruption, which has led to the allegations that the CIA have been actively involved in Eastern Russia. Did something happen? Well, anyway, I'll just continue. What happened in Eastern Russia was that the unrest, the pro-Russian element and the Ukrainian element obviously had differences, and it was a different way of doing business. And the pro-Russian element, it was ethnically connected to Russia. And so exactly the details of how all that flushes out, I don't really know. I just know the allegation of the pro-Russian element was that the CIA was heavily involved there. So it's there's a lot of uncertainty there. The problem with the pro-Russian story, which was that Russia came into the Ukraine to defend the rights of the Russian-speaking citizens in Ukraine. The problem with that is that when that happened, when Russia did come in, the Ukrainian support was far stronger than Russia even thought was real. And they've not been able to make the headway they previously had made. So that kind of throws a wrench in that whole story. And of course, with the president being Jewish, that kind of feeds into the historic conspiracy theories, because we love in the West to accuse the Jewish people of trying to subvert our cultures and take over our countries. And so, there's a long history of Jewish behavior that has been nefarious and dangerous, and the international organization, the cabals, all of that type of stuff are supposedly headed up by Jews. It's just racism that has continued from the old days into the present. Now, of course, racism has come on hard times, and racism is no longer legitimately talked about or addressed. So racism has to take on a slightly different story than it did previously. So today, racism is not about the race of people, but about what country they have legitimacy of being a part of. And so the idea is that Jews belong in Israel. And so as long as they're in Israel, we'll support them, we'll defend them, we'll protect them. But if they're in other countries, they don't belong there. So, of course, the premise of that whole idea here in the U.S. is that the Caucasians belong here, but with that theory of racism that is so prevalent today, Europeans shouldn't be here in the U.S. This belongs to the Indians because they were the ones that were here previously. But there's kind of a disconnect when that comes. So Yazmin, I'm hoping you're being able to figure out how to join this conversation so we can continue on. But in the meantime, I'll just talk more about what's going on in the world. Ukraine is a difficult situation to deal with because there is an element where there's a civil war between the pro-Russian and the pro-Ukrainian element in the country. The U.S. Could be argued that they should not have sent the CIA in, if in fact that's what has really happened. I have never seen any concrete anything to indicate that the CIA are really there, but we know the CIA is covert, and they oftentimes do work in those kind of contexts without the American public knowing. So that's not out of character for the CIA to be involved in that, which probably shouldn't be going on. But the issue with Russia is not that they have covert activities in Ukraine, but that they physically invaded Ukraine. And now the reality of their invading Ukraine is their story for that is that those districts supposedly those districts did have a vote on annexing or becoming independent. I don't know the details of the vote, how it happened, what happened, but the story is that they voted to be annexed, to become independent, and Russia came in to support their independence. So that's the story there. It's a complicated situation. It's probably the first time we have seen this kind of massive support for Ukraine, or one side of the story, including people in Russia that support Ukraine, but not any really military activity from other countries to in the country as well. So it's just Russia in Ukraine, kind of every other place where we see this happening, in Yemen, in Syria, we have other internationals involved in the country as well. In Yemen, of course, it's Iran and Saudi Arabia, and Syria, of course, it's the U.S. It has been the U.S. and Russia, but there are other issues there. It looks like Yazmin, we got you back broadcasting, but there we go.
I don't know what happened. I switched. Let me just go this way.
Okay.
Well, thank you, Pastor Dennis, for this perspective. Is very, it's most of us that we are trying to put together this puzzle, that we don't completely understand what's going on, why this invasion, it's happening, so this is definitely helping us to keep us in a different idea of, what's going on. So let's help here with Yazmin connection, and okay.
There we go.
Okay.
And I was listening to you this whole time.
Oh,
I
you
have
were.
the echo. Let me turn off that over there.
Well, ladies and gentlemen,
Yes.
This is Siembra, and we are with Pastor Dennis Connerson and Yazmin for the host. Okay, so we'll be back to the conversation. Thank you for your patience.
And I was listening to you the whole time. I even tried to answer you. The fact that you said that for the Jewish community, they are seen differently if they live in Israel and if they live abroad. to the United States, I never saw that professed it when it comes to the Jewish community, you know. And talking about Ukraine and Russia, and the prophecy part of it that you mentioned a little bit. There is a lot of conspiracy theory when it comes to that part of what's going on right now in Russia. Prophetically, a lot of Christian people want to say that it has to happen, because if it happened, then that part of the Bible, the prophecy of the Bible will be completed, and that we are living in the end times, and this is all the stuff that the Bible been talking about when it comes to Russia, and when it comes to China too. That we're going to talk a little bit about China too, and the United States. That seems to be, these are the three most powerful countries right now in the world. And the view and the position of these three different countries, when we look at them, and how the rest of the world look at these three powerful countries. But I wanted to, more than anything, I wanted us to touch bases on the prophetic part of it, and how is the church viewing the events that's going on right now in Russia and Ukraine.
Okay. Well, first of all, the idea that Russia is part of the World War III, the Battle of Armageddon, the final battle of the world, okay, all of that is opinion, it's conjecture, and it's based on two terms, Gog and Magog. Those are referenced in Revelation. Mm-hmm. And so people have researched those terms, and the only thing that that Revelation indicates is that they are from the north and the east. Well, for the world at the time, Russia and China, well, China existed, but to think of people coming from China as east probably is a little overstatement, because I don't know that their world was necessarily that big. Our world is that big because we have mass communications, and we have instant access to most parts of the world. Mm-hmm. So the world has shrunk because of technology. But back in those days, I'm not sure that they had that kind of perspective. Now, granted, Thomas went to India, and the apostles did spread out in different places. I can't remember who went to up into Europe, but there is, India was the furthest the apostles went, in that first century. But it's those two terms that we have interpreted. Now, the problem with importing Gog and Magog into our current scenario is that there is a radical misunderstanding of what the book of Revelation was about. At the time, John was in captivity in the island of Patmos. Mm. And his communication was being monitored because they were paranoid about him, okay? And so any communication that went out from him, if he expected it to get to the church or the intended source, had to be sanitized from any political reference that the Romans would have recognized. So he talked in a lot of flowery language, mm-hmm. and big picture type of stuff, cataclysmic references. But those cataclysmic references were an emotional message. He was appealing to the emotional feelings of what the Christians were dealing with under Roman control.
Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense? And so he used references that the church would recognize, but not what the Romans would recognize. And so we today, from a disconnected point of view from that, like to look at that and say, oh, he was looking into the far future, and he was dealing with everything that was global, everything that was big world stuff. He was talking about things coming out of the skies, and he was talking. He was seeing visions of centuries later. Well, prophecy generally worked that people were telling about things that the people would see before the end of time. And in Matthew, when Jesus uses some of that same language, he says, these things will happen before you guys die. Well, we tend to brush over that and pretend like he never said that. But he did, and he meant it. So these things that are talked about in Revelation and in Matthew are references for things that they experienced in their lifetime. And when Jerusalem was destroyed, and when the temple was destroyed, that in the Jewish world was absolutely cataclysmic. That ripped their life out of them completely. I mean, we thought we were unsettled by Trump being in office and the risk of the whole American experience being over. Imagine mixing everything, your ethnicity, your religion, all of that into something that not only was feared, but actually happened.
Mm-hmm.
And how seismic that whole experience would have been for them. Their world was shaken to its very foundation. And that's what Jesus prophesied a lot about that. When he went to the temple, he told them, the temple's going to be destroyed, but I'm going to rebuild the new generation of the temple in 3 days. So he was telling people, this edifice you see right here that is the center of everything you do, before you guys die, it's going to be gone. But there's going to be a spiritual temple that after I die and am resurrected, will take the purpose of all of this way beyond what you ever dreamt possible. And you're going to go into all the world, and you're going to make impact in all the world. And that has literally happened.
Yeah, and I was thinking when they teach that, they teach more in the Bible, in the church, they teach it more as a it's spiritual event than they actually city destroyed. But it did happen but it was destroyed.
It literally was, yes.
Yes, it did happen. I don't think the church, when it teaches that part of the Bible, they actually talk about the physical part that happened, that the actually country or city was destroyed. They more talk about the death and the rebirth, or the not rebirth, resurrection of Jesus Christ. That's how, for me, it's been. That's the experience for me when it was taught in church. That's the way they use it, you know. But talking about and we talking about the connection between the church and the current event, and how they are trying to connect the dots in order to fulfill what they said the Bible said. Mm-hmm. One of the things we talked to was about position of different countries, and I think in the world, every country, whether they did it intentionally or not intentionally, they position themselves in the world to be this or be that. And I'm thinking we talk a little bit about that when it comes to the United States and China and Russia. And I was thinking what we talked about yesterday, that when you look at the United States abroad in the world, me being from another country, we look at United States as the country that is desirable, that country that everybody wants to be and everybody wants to look like. Even me going back home last year, I see Panama looking more and more like the United States, mimicking all the things that the United States, how it runs the country, just culturally. A lot of things are just being adapted about how things are done and run here in the United States. And you talk a little bit about that too when it comes to China and Russia. For some reason, China even being so big, because China is, and I don't say literally big in size, but I'm talking powerful. It is a country that is very powerful. But when we talk about China, people that's not one place that you or your country or your people desire to be like, you know. So position as a country, and United States not being perfect, because we way so far from being perfect. We have a lot of corruption, and the United States has done a lot of bad things in other countries. But for some reason, we don't talk about that, because other countries and people migrating in this country, they want that the United States have portrayed themselves like, you know, as a country that is progressive, rich, and powerful. Yeah. So we're looking at these three countries. And Russia, I don't think people look at Russia too and think, oh my God, we want to look and sound like them, you know. So let's talk a little bit of a position in the world and how these countries that are very powerful are viewed across the world.
Right. Well, the U.S. is unique from all of those countries. The U.S. has broadcast and promoted our culture worldwide in a very demonstrative and very gregarious way. We're the country that is noted for international commerce. We're the country that's noted for Hollywood, for movies, and all of that, the glitz and glamour and all of that goes along with that. We're the country that's known for electronic revolution. We're the country that is known for having multiple cultures come into it with a lack of civil war, which is what most other countries deal with when other cultures come into it. So there's a lot that's very alluring about the U.S. The U.S. is seen as a country that defends their citizens, that defends their reputation, that defends their interests worldwide. And we like countries that are powerful in that regard, that they're going to protect us, because that's what governments are supposed to do. The conflict happens with people in their own countries, because they want their countries to be able to do that when the U.S. comes in and railroads their government and forces this foreign will on their own society. That's not a favorable thing. So the U.S. has a split reputation. People tend to be bipolar worldwide. The U.S. You know what I'm saying? They want to be part of it because that's what they want. They want to be in a society where that is happening and that is the reality. They don't want to be in a society where a foreign country is coming in and doing that to their own country. So, they will oppose the U.S. In their home country, but they're willing to come to the U.S. and celebrate the U.S. here. They just don't want us to do it to their country. They want their country to rise to that same level. Does that make sense? Yeah.
So, and what about China? We talk a little bit about the position in China and how, and my son, he doesn't talk a lot about politics. I think he is engaged because I am, but we was talking about that, and he said, "Mom, China is a big player in all of this," and he even said it. I'm worried because of China. China is humongous, and even though China is sitting just on the fence, looking at what's happening, is a dangerous country that can do a lot of damage in the world. And I was even shocked to hear him say that. So China has positioned itself as the Amazon of industrialized technologies, we want to call it, not technology, but China does mix everything. And that's one of the things that me and he was talking about, is that I said China makes everything that every single thing that we use comes from China, but guns. And I said the only thing that United States really, really fabricates and is guns. But other than that, even if we wanted to, we can't compete with China because of how smart and clever and strategically they became an industrialized country where they make everything, and the rest of the world really, really can't compete and sort of depend on China for everything.
Well, I understand that perception's out there. That perception is highly romanticized and not very accurate. China, because of their population, they're a massive population. They're, by the fact that they are able to be anything close to successful, means they're a powerhouse that everybody has to contend with. There's a lot of problems in China. China was smart enough to realize that they needed to industrialize, and they did. And they had a good way. They figured out a good way to industrialize rather quickly by making people compete for food, to survive, to be able to just sustain themselves. Well, there's nothing that motivates people to be innovative better than putting everything at stake. But it doesn't exactly create a very healthy world. And so, in spite of the fact that that China is able to mass produce all kinds of different things, and they've been able to go into other countries, especially in Africa, to export that stuff and to build dams and build power building structures and all of that kind of stuff in all those countries. They don't have a high enough standard for excellence and safety. So even though, yes, the U.S. did relinquish a lot of things to China and other third world countries to produce for us, the reality is that there are safety concerns and there is quality assurance concerns that haven't been met. And so, like with building supplies, a lot of our builders would buy, their wallboard and all kinds of stuff from China, until they realized that the quality of the product they were buying from China was substandard. And they were starting to lose their shirt in trying to warranty homes that had been built with sub-quality materials. And we've got a lot of that sub-quality materials in our culture right now. I mean, my neighbor next door, he has wallboard that is sub-quality. And every time previous owners would try to hang something on the wall, that whatever they whatever area of the wall they drilled in would crumble.
Yes.
And they would end up with bigger problems. My bathroom downstairs, I've got a toilet paper holder in the wall that, from the time it was put into the wall, has been loose. And the more it's loose, the more it aggravates the wallboard around it. And it's never looked right because the wallboard is sub-quality. It can't hold what we're putting into it. You know what I'm saying? And so it required me as a homeowner to be innovative on how to deal with that. But when those wall boards are made in the U.S., you don't have that problem.
Yeah, and we're talking about quality, and then we're talking about money. And a lot of these companies wants to go the cheaper way. So and every time you go cheaper, you always pay more because that's, especially for certain things like, building a home or anything, either the people that build the home pay more, or the person that is living in a home eventually is going to have to pay more to get better quality products or done in a home. But one of the things we talked to about China is the way they position themselves, like when it comes to land and when they come to just making themselves a presence in these different countries. And one big example is Africa. And I don't remember what country in Africa, but one prime minister told China, we don't want you here because, yes, you're going to come and you're going to build the roads and you're going to put schools and factories and all these things. At what cost? Because we know that you're not going to come in here and just do that because you're good to us. There is a cost that we have to pay. And like that, China is taking over Africa. It's just crazy. And one of the things that I want to talk a little bit too is about Panama. I know in 1999, the United States had this treated with the Panamanians that they will give the Panama Canal back to the Panamanians. What's his name? That I absolutely love. President Partor agreed to in 1999. We're gonna give you guys back the canal so you guys can run it. Right then, China was right there waiting, and China leased the canal from the Panamanians for I don't know how long. And I don't even know if they're still doing it, because I know my mom was telling me, yes, China is the one that is running and was running for as soon as the United States just came in and said, we're going to help you guys with this. You know, so it's strategically, they place themselves around the world and really try to own land or even make themselves present in these different countries in the world. That I think that's kind of smart too. I mean, Detroit, we talked about Detroit a little bit yesterday. And even here in Seattle, we have Chinese people buying homes and land, even if they don't live in it. They just buy it and it sits there. But when you dig, you figure out this is owned by Chinese people or by China, you know. So not only when it comes to what they make, but also they try to place themselves strategically around the world and make themselves present in those different worlds, different parts of the world.
But just be careful when we're talking about Chinese people building, buying a property and buying homes, that we differentiate between Chinese ethnicity and and Chinese government.
Okay. Yeah.
Because a lot of those people alleging those kinds of things are not differentiating. So these might be American Chinese buying properties and buying houses, but because they're ethnically Chinese, they're to be feared and suspicious of as trying to further China's agenda. So we have to be careful when we hear those reports to research ourselves and know which one are we talking about. Are we talking about actual Chinese government? Or are we just talking about people who have an ethnicity of being Chinese? So I remember hearing that here in the state of Washington. I'm not terribly familiar with that in other states, but that's nothing new. A big part of London is owned by Russian oligarchs. You know, we have Saudi Arabia is buying property here, like nobody's business either. The nice thing is that our federal government, if it were to become a problem, our federal government could step in and seize that property and change that scenario. Does that make sense?
Yes.
I understand it's a concern. We don't know where it's going to lead. We don't know what's going to happen. But the reality is, the U.S. is prime real estate for all kinds of stuff. So anyone in any country that wants to make a good investment, they're probably going to make it here first. You know, if they're completely concerned with making money. Now, if they're concerned about their own people and concerned about their own culture and their own society, they're not going to do that. They're going to put it in their own people, their own country. One of the problems that we see a lot in Asia, and I'm sure it's true in Africa as well, that people are focused on personal benefit, personal wealth, instead of helping their people and helping their culture and helping their immediate environment. And so, like in Indonesia or Malaysia, they will make contracts with international corporations to come in and do stuff, and they will clear it for those international corporations to bring in all their own people and do all of the subcontracting with their own people, their own country. And so all that host country gets is the final product as a standalone. They don't benefit from the technology that's used that goes into whatever that final product is. They don't benefit from getting subcontracts and people being hired and being able to make a family wage or whatever. All they get is a final product. And anytime you buy into another country like that, that is a critical problem. And are you still there, Yazmin?
Yes, I am.
Okay. Just wanted to make sure there. So I understand that we don't know what to make of it, but to convert that into paranoia, I'm not necessarily sure that is an appropriate way to look at all of that, because when they do that, they're hurting their own country.
So we're going to switch a little bit, because we're talking about positions and countries, and we talk a little bit about China and the United States. I want to talk about Russia and the oil, because there is a lot of talking now about oil, and there is a lot of talking now about shifting into green energy and trying to get we not out of that oil, or a oil, how do you say, consume that we consume so much oil, even though here in the United States we produce most of our own oil too. But I don't know if this is what had to happen or is happening in order for us to get more conscious about changing the way we there is a lot of countries ahead of us when it comes to electric cars and weaning out from using so much oil, and the connection between the oil and the environment. And now that we have to depend on these people, we talk about Russia controlling most of the oil in Europe, and the consuming of the oil in Europe comes from Russia. That is a big thing. And now United States have to rely in Venezuela, and I don't remember what was the other country. I don't remember. Saudi, I think it's Saudi. So Russia saying, you know what, we are the big dogs when it comes to oil, and you guys gonna have to either negotiate with us or take whatever we said, because we are the ones that run this industry, sort of it when it comes to Europe. So how we start getting people to start thinking different when it comes to gas and oil, because for some reason United States is big pushback. Not for some reason, we know why, because of money. They are pushback of the electric cars, and it's too expensive. This is too much. And I even talked to people. I just bought a car but I really wanted an electric car, you know. How do you start shifting first here to let people understand we don't want to rely on other countries. 2, we want to help the environment, and this is the way we can do that, by helping the environment.
Right. Well, there's 2 parts of that whole issue that we have to deal with. The issue is cheap. Russia is a big player in oil, but Russia is not the primary player in oil. But because they have pipelines that they've established that pipe the oil underground to various parts of Europe, one of those biggest pipelines goes under Ukraine. Because of that, they're able to lower the cost of getting the oil to market, so they can make more money off of it, and the countries that get the oil can sell it for less. The issue with Europe is not that they don't have access to oil worldwide. The issue is that the cost of having it shipped from the Middle East or shipped from the US or any other part of the world just raises the price of the oil. And in reality, the US is pretty much the only place in the world that has oil at the cheap price that we pay for it. You know, we're beginning to pay the price for oil now that Europe paid for it 20 years ago. You realize that?
No, I did. I did, but I'm thinking what you said, and I said, why are oil so expensive now? Why is that? And President Biden said that there's no reason to have this oil price gouge.
The reason is because the oil companies are all about profit. Our local oil producers are not producing at full volume. And that drives the price up. They're trying to maximize their profit.
Let me see what you're saying. So right now, the oil that we are consuming is oil that was already there. There's not like even stuff that they have to produce in order for us to consume.
Well, the process of producing oil is ongoing, but the U.S. is not producing oil as fast as we're capable of doing. If the oil companies really cared about the hurt it causes to the American people, they would maximize their oil production. But and there could be some altruistic reasons why they're not doing it, because there is a limited oil supply that at some point we're going to run out of. So that's part of the push for renewable energy, is because there are people who do look to the future and look to the day when we run out of a non-renewable source of energy, petroleum oil. But the main reason we know about is they're trying to maximize their profit.
And talking about green and environment, do you think that maybe that is gonna make us think a little bit more of how we want to start changing the way we and where and how we get our energy in this country?
Right.
There's a lot of pushback when it comes to green energy. here in the United States.
I agree. I really hope it does, and I really think it's going to make an impact. Trump's bizarreness has cost him a lot of support, and people who were rallying heavily for him before no longer are, because they're starting to see through the rhetoric and all of that, everything that the gymnastics that he has done. The same is going to be true of renewable energy as well. Right now, renewable energy is not a social issue. It's been turned into a political issue.
That's right.
So this is not about what's best for our world. This is what's best for the Republican Party. The Republicans being the ones that are behind big oil, and the Democrats being behind renewable energy. So we have to get it out of the political realm and back into the social realm. But the only way that's going to happen is if people are going to have to hurt enough. They're going to have motivation to stop letting it be political in their worldview. Does that make sense?
Yes, it absolutely makes sense, because for the life of me, I don't even know why we are just so back away from being such a big country, rich country, and we push back when it comes to electric cars, and everybody, even the regular person, would say, no, those are just so expensive. I said, but you buy a truck, a big old truck. That is correct.
Yeah.
So I don't even know, but yes, Russia right now, maybe it's a good thing to point and have the light in them when it comes to oil, to see, wait a minute, maybe we need to change. Right. But like you said, money is a big factor in everything. And I wanted to talk a little bit about money when it comes to war, and when it comes to uncertainty, and when it comes to the rumors of war, and when it comes to the pandemic, that the poor people, women and kids, are the collateral damage. And rich people just live disconnected from the rest of us. And when these things happen, when adversity happens all around the world, the people that are making the most money are the rich people. Mm-hmm. Money is a factor, and it disconnects the rich from the poor and the rest of us. I mean, I went to Panama last year, and I remember it took me 3 hours to go through custom. And I was talking to one of the guys, the police guys from the airport, and I said, look, Beyonce and JC will never have to do that. They had the private airport. They can just jump in their jet and go everywhere they want in this pandemic day. The rich people live very disconnected from the rest of us, even when it comes to the pandemic. Mm-hmm. And making a lot more money when we talk about Pfizer and Moderna, when we talk about Jeff Bezos, and when we talk about Elon Musk, and when we talk about these super rich people are making more money in time of adversity, when the rest of us are really struggling. Mm-hmm. Money is a big thing. How do we start at least acknowledging that these things are created? I said it's created in order for these people to make money. Or even if it's not created, this is who really benefit from all these things.
You're gonna need to watch that, Yazmin. You're sounding very un-American. Because the American way is unbridled wealth.
Wow.
That is what drives capitalism. Is the freedom for people to make as much wealth as they possibly could want, and not have anybody stand in their way. Now, that ideal of capitalism would be tolerable if we all had an internal gauge inside of us that said, I can't do this. I feel too guilty. There has to be a social conscience. That's the only way that this is going to be changed or turned around, is a social conscience. Now, the problem is everybody feels the need to have a social conscience, but the wealthy have short-circuited that need for a social conscience, and have found pet projects to dazzle people with large amounts of money. Now, the large amounts of money that they're dazzling people with is so minuscule to what they actually have, they don't even notice it. But it is more than most of us will ever see in a lifetime. So we're dazzled.
Yeah, the thing that I don't even know is people realize that war, in times of war, and we talked a little bit about this too yesterday. It was about how people make money and create, and they actually create this thing in order to make money. And we talked a little bit about President Bush and Mr. Evil, what's his name? Dick
Trump?
Cheney.
Dick Cheney. Oh yeah.
Yes, I call him Mr. Evil. He when what happened in Iraq, the invasion of Iraq, we really, as American, we don't think the cause of the Iraq people. 120,000 people die in that war. And maybe I would say, I don't want to say numbers, and just, I think 20 or more Americans died in that war. But it's almost like the life of certain people are not valuable. Is we gonna sacrifice this country and these people in order for us to make money? The lie of saying that there was weapon of mass destruction, and there's no accountability. There's nothing to say, you guys are responsible for the death of these people, the Americans and the Iraq, because you created this war in order for you to make more money, is unconscionable to me. It is no consequence to politicians, no consequence to leadership. When it comes to people's life, the poor people are sacrificable lambs in order for these people to make money. It's just crazy. And I don't think people don't connect the dots when it comes to war and adversity and money.
Right. Well, partly because here in the U.S. historically, presidents are not supposed to be able to profit from their office. And with the exception of Trump, every president has divested their direct connection with profit making when they took office. Now, it doesn't mean that don't get it back after they leave office, depending on how they divested it. Okay. But Dick Cheney, of course, wasn't president, so I don't know that he had to divest his profit-making. But part of it, but like with Dick Cheney, most of what happened when he was vice president was that he enriched his friends, so that when he left office, they would continue to enrich him. And that's how a lot of politicians do it. They might, to get directly rich, might be a little too obvious. Mm-hmm. So they enrich their friends, and of course, you butter my hand, I'll butter yours, kind of a thing.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
So,
I wanted.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I wanted to talk a little bit about Yemen and the wars that are going on, because everybody is focused on what's going on right now in Ukraine. That I don't want to minimize that, because it's to me, it is crazy that I will be sitting here today and tomorrow I just have to get up and with almost nothing and don't know where I'm going, because this is what's happening now. These people are like, what do we do? Where we go? This is our land. This is our country.
Right.
So I wanted to talk a little bit more about what's going on in Yemen and Somalia, and what's going on also in Syria. It's about 11 years or more that more than 500,000 people had to migrate. And I don't think there is the same light to when it comes to, and one of the things that you did when we started this show is exactly what you did. You said racism, it looks very different now than it used to be.
Right.
So the light that the Ukraine people, and again, I don't want to minimize it, because I don't know how would I even have to have a little baby or a child that you just get up and said, we gotta go. And where are we going? We don't even know where we're going, but this is happening in other places in the world, and it doesn't get the same light.
Right. Well, there is a difference with Ukraine from a lot of those other places. All of them, Yemen, Somalia, Syria, are all involved in civil war. The society is divided between two warring factions. Okay, the problem is when foreigners get involved in the conflict. In Yemen, you've got the Houthis that are supported by the Iranians, and then you've got the original government that's supported by Saudi Arabia. Mm-hmm. And so they're kind of doing what the U.S. is doing in Ukraine. There's not really a direct involvement in Yemen, but both Iran and Saudi Arabia are sending war-making machinery and massive money to their faction to help empower them to get the upper hand. Mm-hmm. Which, as a Christian, I think our role it should not be to empower people to kill each other, mm-hmm. but to help both sides come to the table and try to moderate a peace between them, which the U.S. has done a lot of times. And to our credit, with Egypt and Israel, we've helped broker peace there. We've helped broker peace in other places. We haven't always brokered peace. Sometimes we have created war. Sometimes we have uprooted governments because they were they weren't friendly to us, or they were too friendly to Russia. It's probably the primary reason we've uprooted governments. Somalia, I'm not sure if any foreign entities are involved in that war currently. We've been involved in that in the past, but the civil war continues. Syria, people have played a role and then not played a role. Obviously, with Ukraine, Russia's distracted. I don't think we're involved in Syria currently, unless we have CIA there. But I don't know.
No, I was thinking, there's not been shed a light in these different places. Is you can see the difference between, different places and what's going on in these countries. And migration, I know our time is getting, migration is one of the big things too. When this thing happens, the people that migrate, and we talking about, I don't know exactly how much people already, I think 5 million people already out of Ukraine.
Right.
But then we have I think it's the biggest I ever heard. We also have Latino America. We have people from Salvador and Guatemala, Honduras that migrated from the countries. We have all this different. Syria was a big one. I think Syria probably was the biggest one before Ukraine. It was more than 500,000 people, 600,000 people still living in the desert in tents because they just got caught in the middle of this thing with this dictator that is running the country.
Right.
So migration is, I just can't imagine. Some people migrate because of the choice they want to make a better life for themselves and their people. But when you are forced because of civil war, because of civil unrest, because of those things, is just heart-wrenching to just see people just leaving, their country, and because of they also corner and push to do that.
Right.
It is very hard.
Yeah. And if we could go in and help broker peace, that would be absolutely wonderful. But you can't broker peace if the players only will accept two options: all or nothing. When both sides want all or nothing, there's no peace to be brokered.
And one of the things that I always think is a disconnect between the leadership and the rest of the country. For me, one of the things that I look at Latino America, I look at RAW, I look at Panama, and I look at Colombia, and I look at Mexico, and I look at Honduras. When you look at the leadership in these countries that even looked at the rest of the country, it's just crazy. Like Mexico or Guatemala, that is very indigenous countries. I mean, 90% of the people in these countries are indigenous. And when you see the leadership is more of the white descendant Spanish people, it's just crazy to me that how did you elect some people, this type of people that have completely a disconnect. They live their whole life as wealthy people, You know they don't experience. I mean, you look at the people that migrate from Mexico and Guatemala, they're indigenous people.
Right.
Most of them there are. And when you look at leadership, it's so different. There's such a disconnect.
Right.
And for the life of me, I don't understand how people chose and select and put people like that in leadership. And we're talking about United States too, because we're talking about Trump.
Right.
When it comes to the white community, that they just see that this man is white, but they don't see that he is really rich, and there is a disconnect between you and him.
Right.
You know.
But the reason for that is as old as civilization is. There has always been a connection between wealth and divine favor. We have this illusion that wealth is involved in divine favor, that God favors them, that's why they're wealthy.
Wow. Wow.
And that is a driving force we can't ignore.
So
and the only way to change that is to educate people that wealth does not equal virtue. It does not equal rights. Wealth can oftentimes be the result of evil.
And there is rich people that are really, really good people, and they're conscious about, and they know the responsibility that they carry with the money that they have. You know, percentage-wise, I don't know how much of these people are like that, but there is also rich people that are good people, and they know this money comes with a responsibility, you know. But
you had to they're comparatively good people. The idea of wealth and having responsibility, that is residual from the aristocracy. That's that was the base of European culture, the aristocracy, where the wealthy had wealth, but they had a responsibility to serve the world around them.
Mm-hmm.
Sharing that wealth was not part of that responsibility. That taking care of them was. So they became the parents of society.
Mm-hmm.
You understand? So you could make as much money as you wanted to, but once you had it, then you had to be a parent. In society, and that's an economic system that the U.S. rejected to create the American experience. But nonetheless, we're back there. Another name for that is oligarchy.
You know, so I was thinking, we got about 3-4 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
If you was to have to say something to, especially you, one of the things that I love that you just said is that as Christian people, we should never advocate to go into war. That we should always try to see how we sit down and we have we negotiate. But so to our, what would you tell people when it comes to trying to shift us from just using physical force and start looking at how we negotiate with other countries, how we sit down and put ourselves into the shoes of other countries too? Yeah. What we to finish, because yes, we got a couple minutes, and Yeah.
What I would say is we have to let go of the idea that might makes right. And might includes wealth. It includes power. It includes opportunity.
Mm-hmm.
Just because we have those things doesn't mean that we have the privilege to use it however we see fit. The other thing is that when we cut off anybody from access to making their dreams come true, we rob society and we rob the world of whatever contributions they could make. And so we cut our own potential by doing that.
Yes, Pastor Dennis, we got about a minute or two or more. So I wanted to thank you.
That's it for today, folks.
Yeah, I wanted to thank everyone that was listening. Thank you, and God bless. Gracias, Chris. Bye.
Thank you.
Back to you later.
See you next time in Siembra. Thank you.
BT Radio.